Have you ever wondered why nobody cares, talks about, or possibly even knows about your brand? You've spent cash money on digital marketing and all of those expensive activities, but it's just not getting the results that you want. That's where I come in. My name is Nicholas Kuhner, host of From Startup to Wunderbrand, and I talk with the best in the industry and bring in brand insights to help you get your brand back on track. Your brand is your most important business asset, so why not make the most of it? And you can do that right here on From Startup to Wunderbrand.
So I will tell you the number one mistake I see all marketing. These are the biggest brands in the world and this is to some of my students who are just starting like a pressure washing business. The number one mistake I see is that brands talk about themselves more than they talk about their customers. And that's a big deal in narrative psychology. So imagine in the world, your world, my world, we are the heroes of our own story. Nicholas, why? Because the day we were born, we opened up our eyes and we were the center of attention. Every morning we wake up and we're the center of attention.
You guys know I love talking to smart people who have written books because then they hopefully know what they're talking about. And Will Leach is one of those folks who definitely does know what he's talking about. And we were just chatting before we got onto this call about, I had a previous interview about persuasion as well. So we're going to have to find some new nuggets for Will to give us. And let me give a quick background quickly. We're joined by Will Leach, founder of Mindstate Group, a behavioral science expert and author of the bestseller Marketing to Mindstates. And we're going to get into that mindset discussion a little later. Will reveals why most marketing gets filtered out by the non-conscious mind and how understanding temporary mind states let you break through, craft emotionally resonant messages and drive real customer behavior. Will, welcome.
Nicholas, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So we've got a bit of our backgrounds have actually crossed in some way in the past, in that we've both worked for multinationals and been stuck in silos and had to deal with customers across large territories, multiple markets, etc. So Will, this book of yours, Marketing to Mindstates, what prompted it? Sorry, it's a bit cliche, but what made you write this book?
Yeah, I actually talk about it in the book very quickly. Here's what it was. I was doing traditional market research at PepsiCo. When I say traditional market research, it's sending a survey to somebody and asking them to rate how much they like this advertisement on a scale of 1 to 7. And that was the world I grew up in. I did my undergrad in economics and my master's in applied econometrics. I never took a psychology class in my life. And so I was brought up in the world that said, if you ask people what they want or what they say or what their opinion is of something, then that's truth. And when you work at a big company and you're spending millions of dollars on advertising, you do a lot of market research, and you oftentimes will go out and you'll spend 2 years, not so much anymore, but 2 years developing a product and launching it. And then all of a sudden, all your models that said the product's going to win in market, it fails. And why does that happen? Like we had the research. We had people that said 78% of people said that they are going to buy this product, but yet 2% of people bought the product. And for many years, market researchers were told, well, all we have to do really is people aren't quite sure, so we just have to downweight the data. So people say 78%, but we're going to think it's around 25%. And that was the solution, right? And it was a time period when I was at Pepsi and I was working in a laboratory. We had a CMO come in from Kraft and he said, you don't know how to do market research. Not me personally, but the whole group, right? Because that's what you have to do. When you're a CMO, you have to come in and change things. He was going to change market research. And he brought in a behavioral psychologist. And that was a very different way of thinking about market research because he had access to all these academic studies that were focused on how people think versus what they say and the mathematics behind how do we calculate whether somebody's going to buy a product or whatever. And we started investing really heavily in this space. We brought in anthropologists, neuroscientists. This is back, guys, in like 2017. 2007.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it was way 2017. 2007, really early on stuff. And when you talk to these PhDs in behavioral psychology and neuroscience, you start realizing there's something really under the hood in the subconscious. And I bought in, Nicholas. I started reading everything I could. I ran a laboratory for PepsiCo here in Dallas for a number of years that tested these non-conscious factors. And when you read the literature, you start realizing that we're in this space of we understand now how the non-conscious works, but we really don't understand how it works. We're in our infancy. That was me. And the reason why I wrote the book was that I spent about 7 years focused on trying to figure out this model while I was at PepsiCo, trying to figure out how people make these decisions, buying decisions. And eventually at one point I finally said, you know what, I've got this model in my head. I'm going to go ahead and share it. And so that's what I did with the book.
It's amazing how these large companies that you think should know some of this stuff already just go by the seat of their pants. And very often I've worked with the likes of Nestle and McDonald's and things like that. And companies like Nestle in particular, they make horrific decisions, but they can get away with it because they've got so many invoices on the way. They've got so much a wave of invoices and a wave of cash behind them, so they can actually weather the storm. But not everybody, or not all companies have that luxury. I'm just going to go back one quick step, and because you probably don't know about this about me, I ran the largest youth surveys in Africa, again, around that same period that you were at Pepsi.
Yeah.
And we were working with Unilever in particular to figure out, they were doing all the quantitative stuff, and they brought us in to assist with more the qualitative stuff. So all of the focus groups and a bit more desktop research, understanding the youth market. Because at that stage, so when we were starting out, no Instagram, no TikTok, none of this. So we had to go out and actually talk to people versus go and scrape everything that you can now on TikTok and all of these things. So the research world has changed a lot. From when you started coming up with this concept of understanding the different mindsets, do you think human brains have changed from the early 2000s to now? Or are they exactly the same and we can treat people's brain the same going forward?
Yeah, no, I'd say I could argue that the brains and how we make decisions are the same. The factors that influence how we make decisions have changed, especially with COVID. Let me give you an example. So in my book, I talk about these 9 core motivations that drive the vast majority of human behavior. Things, and you learn them maybe in psychology classes when you're undergrad, right? Things like Maslow talked about security. That's a core motivation. Or empowerment from Deci and Ryan's work. Our desire for control. Or belonging. Our desire for affiliation. So these 9 core motivations. And I work across many different industries. I'm in pharmaceutical, CPG, retail. And these motivations, these 9 motivations come up all the time in different areas. So there's a nice kind of variety of motivations that companies should know about. When COVID happened, everybody's motivation went to 2. Security, I want safety, and I want more control. Because imagine all of a sudden your restaurant was your house, your school was your house, your place of worship was your house, your entertainment was your house. So people just felt so out of control. They're losing jobs. And so control. I would work, no lie, with, say, SC Johnson on scented candles and oils. Number 1 motivation, empowerment. I want to have control. You would work at food companies, controlled. So what happened was that people globally felt like they had so lack of control over everything, no matter what they talked about, whether it was talking about what type of toilet paper I'm buying or what kind of scented candles, empowerment came up. So I would argue that these 9 motivations, only one part of the model, they're universal. They've been around forever. We've just codified it in the last couple of decades. But those factors, which motivations are still to this day running things. Empowerment is still a strong motivation. Now it's less around the empowerment people seek is less around control over after COVID. It's more, I live in this world now where the economy is all over the place. There's so much trepidation. It's volatile. So people seek control there. So that control mechanism is still inherent in many different categories, where if I would have told you back in 2005 or whatever, it wasn't a big deal at all. People felt like they had control.
A lot of folks are going to listen to what we're talking about now and say, well, my business is too small. We don't need research, or we don't have the huge budgets that SC Johnson and these big companies that you're dealing with are dealing with. Why would you say that is not the case? And what kind of business is going to be the best? What type of person is going to be the best one to get value out of this book?
Yeah. So I wrote the book, Marketing to Mindstates. I will tell you, I could have easily called it Parenting to Mindstates, Selling to Mindstates, Managing to Mindstates. All the idea here is, how do we better understand how people make decisions and influence those decisions? If you're in the marketing world, that's what your job is to do. Whether you know it or not, Your job is to influence decisions, hopefully to buy your brand, right? Or to buy a product. To do that, you can do that very sophisticatedly. Hiring neuroscientists, doing EEG research. You can do all that stuff. But I also teach a class at Texas A&M University here in Texas. And a lot of my students, it's a professional course on behavioral marketing. And a lot of the students, I literally one time had a student who was a professional juggler on the streets of Toronto. And he loved behavioral science. He was just very eclectic anyways. And he has no marketing budget. His marketing is sitting in a town square and getting people to come over. And he has an Instagram account, right? So here's what I'll tell you to do. You can do very sophisticated research, or you can do just something as basic as what you just said, Nicholas. Have conversations with people. Imagine that. You can actually talk to people. And here's how you do it. If you have, let's say I'm going to give you an example of a restaurant. Let's say if you're a restaurant owner out there. One of the most important things you need to understand are what are the goals of your customers. The way to do that is literally ask them, hey, tell me what are like the 5 reasons why. 5 is the right number. What are the 5 reasons, or what are the 5 most important things that are important to you in choosing a restaurant? Something as simple as that. Now, maybe we want to be like, but just having the conversation, like, what is the reason why you chose this? That is what you get to what's called functional goals. Then what you can do from that is just ask the same person. So collectively, if you got that, like, why would that matter? Why does that matter? It's something called laddering. You probably did in your days doing research, right? You ladder somebody to the emotional goal they have. It's the emotional goals. I just want to bring the family together because life, I haven't gotten a chance to really connect with my kids. Then all you do is a third question. You say, okay, so bring your kids together. How does that make you feel? Or what does that enable you to do now? And then if you can get them to say this or get them to talk about this, they may say something like, oh, in the busy part of the day, I want to connect with my family because I feel like we just haven't had a moment to really bring ourselves together and connect. Just by asking those 3 questions, I right now can guarantee you that you can take every aspect of my book, Marketing in Mindstates, and go through these activities you have in the book. You can go through those activities, and then you can come out with, here are the exact words you should be using to communicate the value proposition that your company has. My point is, like you said, these things happen around conversations. The best insights come from people's words, unstructured data. Let people talk. What I've done and what a lot of behavioral scientists have done is say, here are the questions you should be asking. And now here's how you should analyze those answers. And so it's not any more expensive than you having a conversation or doing a basic run through on social media and basically reviewing what people say about your brand through that lens of what do people want? Why is that important to them? And how will that make them feel? If you answer those 2 questions, you can message to them.
And it's funny how, as you ask those questions and do your laddering, like you mentioned, the emotional side comes out. So it doesn't go down to a functional, I need cheap food. It is, this week I've been spending time with family. I need to show them that I still love them and that they don't think I'm a terrible father. So It goes to that emotional side, which people aren't going to say off the bat. People also don't necessarily know what they want off the bat. It is a subconscious, or not. It's more a subconscious thought. And I guess this book is also going to be quite useful to folks who are trying to figure out, why is my messaging not resonating with my target market? I've got a great price. My website's up to date. My AI, GEO, AEO, AIO, etc. is all set up. What am I doing wrong? If you can maybe talk through a hypothetical or a client of yours that has gone through the book or gone through your training and discovered that aha moment through going through your process, that would be quite useful.
Yeah. So I will tell you the number one mistake I see all marketing. These are the biggest brands in the world and this is to some of my students who are just starting like a pressure washing business. The number one mistake I see is that brands talk about themselves more than they talk about their customers. And that's a big deal in narrative psychology. So imagine in the world, your world, my world, we are the heroes of our own story. Nicholas, why? Because the day we were born, we opened up our eyes and we were the center of attention. Every morning we wake up and we're the center of attention. We have to be because our eyes are always shooting out and the visuals are coming in. What brands do, and I worked on I'll give you an example. I worked on the Sun Chips brand. So Sun Chips, if you guys don't know, it's a PepsiCo owned brand. And I was a market researcher on there for a number of years. And I'm not really health conscious. I am a little bit more now. Back then, I certainly was. I was in my young 20s and wasn't health conscious at all. And so when I joined that brand, I really wasn't all that excited about it. However, if you were talking about your company and your brand in every meeting you're in and every single day, and you're looking at all the advertising and you're talking to people about healthy snacking, you drink the Kool-Aid. Nicholas, like you drink it and you start becoming so health conscious and you become a part of the brand, which is actually really cool. I think that's all right. The problem is that your customers know a heck of a lot more than just sun chips. Their worlds are way, way more complex. And so as a marketer, I remember like, okay, we've got to drive sales. So what do? Let's go talk about our next flavor of sun chips, or let's go talk about this new campaign idea. We talk about ourselves. In everyday life, we don't think about brands at all. We think about ourselves, and we use brands to help ourselves. So the number one thing I would tell you to do, and the brand helps, and the book helps you do this, is understand what your customers' goals are, what their motivations are, how they approach their goals, and then lastly, any cognitive biases. I did not use my brand in one time. Didn't talk about my brand one time. If I talk to you, Nicholas, and I know your goals, I know what motivates you to reach those goals in my category, right? I know your goals. And let's say if you're that restaurant, I know your goals around finding a great restaurant. I know what motivates you to find that great restaurant. In this example, it was nurturance. It was about bringing my family together, the desire for care and to be appreciated from the husband or from the father. That's your motivation. Your approach, you want to make sure you don't make the wrong choice for your family because you bring the whole family to the wrong restaurant. The menus they don't have enough variety. Your daughter's mad because she can't get her nuggies that she wanted. You're in trouble as a dad and you brought her to the wrong. So you're cautious. You don't want to make a mistake. And then lastly, maybe you have a bias that's social proof, for instance, and that you make decisions based upon what others are recommending. Fine. If I just talk to you and I didn't say anything about what kind of restaurant I have, and if I just talked about you as a father trying to bring your family together, you don't want to make a big mistake, and everyone recommends my restaurant, you are much more successful in your marketing before I ever talk about I sell Mexican food, I have great nachos, etc. Brands make mistakes because they want to talk about themselves because they live their brand every day. If we could just figure out as brand marketers and any marketer out there that people want to hear about themselves, you will increase sales immediately. And the book, and I think just thinking around your customer experience in that lens of goals, motivations, approach, and then these biases will make you 10x marketer.
Well, if anyone listening has got their bingo card out, I'm going to talk about the customer journey quickly because that's one of my favorite subjects. And obviously, this fits in perfectly with developing or improving your customer journey. Because when I was working at Interbrand, we had not just the different phases: awareness, consideration, purchase, and loyalty, but we had a feeling, emotional state running across that process as well, because we that's why I think Interbrand was quite successful. Is they brought in all of the folks that you're talking about to do these smart things, and that makes the process quite much deeper. And we used to have little smiley faces that we put in. So throughout the process, what is your feelings throughout this entire process? Excited in the beginning and then a bit down in the middle because you're seeing how much the things cost or how many choices you've got, and then so there's a huge emotional state that smart marketers take consideration of. And the statistics change the whole time, and you can't take these numbers at face value the whole time. But something like 80% of choices are made emotionally versus rationally. So brands that are able to speak to you in a way or connect with you in a way that really resonates with you at that particular moment in time is so important.
The thing that you just said, Nicholas, I think I was going to say people buy feelings, not products. They use products to feel. So if you know those feelings, like you said, and you can incorporate those types of feelings into your marketing, people just feel attracted to you without really knowing much about you. You build trust, then feelings, everything else. So one thing to think about, I love what you just said, and something to remind people of is understand the feelings. In my world, that's called motivations, motivational psychology. Understanding the feelings that your customers want will make you, like I said, a 10x marketer.
Now, let's go back to the book a little bit. You spent quite a lot of time coming up with this concept, tightening up all the bolts. It's out in the world now. Is version 2 coming out? Is there training based off of this book that you've got? What is the next phase for Will? Because you've obviously, hopefully, market researched the crap out of this.
That's right. What's fun is you better have AI in your book. If you don't, because we're living in a new world. If you're in marketing, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur out there, artificial intelligence is a part of your life. It just will be. Even if you're in the trades, artificial intelligence will be a part of your life. And artificial intelligence is impacting marketing in dramatic ways. It's also impacted how I do my research, as well as how do we think about using artificial intelligence, if you're a small business owner out there, to activate on these mind states. We in fact do have a new book coming out, and the new book should come out at the end of end of this year. So at the end of 2026 and maybe in 2027. And the idea here is the upfront will focus a lot on, in a world where we're being inundated with information and where you have access to where you can create hundreds of marketing images easily for almost no money. What we're seeing in the marketplace is, because artificial intelligence makes your life more efficient. If you're a business and you want to market, you can go faster marketing, cheaper marketing, and arguably better marketing with artificial intelligence the way it is. What I want to focus on in the book is how to become more effective marketers. And what we can use is artificial intelligence to look at your company, look at your industry, to identify those 4 factors that are in the book: people's goals, their motivations, their approach, and these cognitive heuristics, and then integrate those factors into your marketing. So I've got a whole company that focuses on behavioral marketing. I teach this at 2 universities. I teach behavioral marketing at SMU, Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, as well as Texas A&M's Human Behavioral Laboratory. So if you want to learn more about it, certainly get the book, but also there is a course at Texas A&M University that you can apply, or you can just sign up for, and you can get a professional certification in applied behavioral economics. And in that is my course, Behavioral Marketing. So yeah, that's kind of how we're teaching it right now. I love the teaching side of things, but also just something as simple as going to my LinkedIn page, and I write about this stuff all the time. And I do a lot of case studies as well. So if you just go to my LinkedIn page, you can find a lot of this stuff as well.
That'd be fantastic. You should come and do a class for me at my university here in Oslo as well. We can do a shared class maybe. You touched on the AI marketing, and yes, it makes things much more efficient. You can have personalization at scale, and you can get people at those different motivation phases as well. Yeah. But one of the things I've been grappling with is, with this mass personalization, is that actually a good thing? Or are people going to say, I know that this algorithm is just trying to catch me at the right time? It's just something I've been considering is, I know that this is happening. Maybe because we're in the industry, we know that this is happening, and we're getting personalized landing pages, personalized everything. It does make decision making perhaps slightly more efficient, but I feel it's not devious, but I do feel they're just trying to sell what they've got and just package it with the right words to get you. Do you think people are going to get a bit of fatigue towards that?
That's a great conversation to have. I'll just share my initial thoughts. First thing we have to think about is, if we're using technology, artificial intelligence specifically, should we let customers know? And there's an argument to say yes and no. One argument to say yes is that by letting people know, because what if they find out? And it's sometimes you feel it through your intuition. You know that this doesn't feel human, right? So there is one rule of thought: say, let people know, be transparent. And because you're transparent, people appreciate that. Okay. The problem with that is, when you let people know that you're using technology, it's almost like when it's Valentine's Day and you go to a 7-Eleven to buy your wife roses. Yeah, you got the roses, but you went to 7-Eleven. Do I feel special as my wife? Of course not, right? So by telling somebody that you're using AI, even though you're being transparent, are you making them feel as if you don't care about me? And I could argue yes. The other side is you don't tell people, and you try to make your algorithm so great, and they're getting better every day, but you try so hard to not tell people. But then people intuitively know it, because we're human beings. We have deep emotional sensitivities and intuition. And we're like, that doesn't feel right. Or frankly, somebody messes up the AI and it calls you Frank and your name is Will, right? And then you know. And then you didn't tell somebody, and then you feel like you betrayed me. Like, this is so either way, you're in a quandary. And I don't know if I have the solution to that. Here's what I do think, though. I know that human beings who are driven by emotions and their own goals, and they approach decisions in certain ways, by all the research I've done over the last, arguably in my entire career, but for my company for the last 12 years, people appreciate marketing that is tapping into their intuition, their goals, their motivations, into their subconscious. they appreciate that. They won't come and say, I appreciate that, but it resonates with them. They nod in focus groups like, yeah, that feels like me. So I think that the marketing itself is better, and you should be marketing to people's intuition and their goals, things like that. It's better marketing. The problem is if you have a crap product and you're selling something that doesn't really meet their needs because you need to make that money, right? That's where you get to an issue. And I've had clients, big clients, talk about the use of fear in marketing. I can scare you into buying a product. It's not hard. The problem with that is that when you scare somebody, there's an association that brain is now associated with fear, even if you are protecting them, but you're using fear. So this is the classic ADT commercial where the burglar kicks in the door and the wife is scared and terrified and she presses the button. ADT is the hero. Those marketers think that's a good idea. In my world, I think to myself, nope, you've just associated your brand with fear. And even at the subconscious level, that feeling is not a good feeling to have for long-term sales. It can get you to buy an ADT product immediately. Yes, I don't want my wife to be broken, the house being broken, and my kids are in there. I'm going to go sign up for ADT. 3 or 4 months, 5 months later, a year later, when nothing's happened to my house, my life has not changed in any way, and I'm still paying that monthly contract, I'm getting frustrated with that. So my thing, Nicholas, would be, I think using persuasion and marketing is what you should be doing to get somebody to buy a product that would benefit their lives. And if it truly does benefit their lives, you did the right thing. You honored them by giving them a product that benefits their lives, but you did it in a way that also allowed for them to make a choice in an emotional way that made their lives better. If you're selling cigarettes and ammunition and guns, maybe you should just think differently about that. So that's where I think I place my bet.
I think there's the word, they don't say ammunition now, they say freedom lead or something. I'm not sure. No.
Freedom lead. In Texas, I haven't heard that, which is surprising.
What's it? A wireless something. Anyway, yeah. I love that example about ADT. I think that it just shows there's so much psychology behind how to market yourself correctly and what mind state to get folks in. And if only there's a book people could read to get a better understanding of this, and it is called Marketing to Mindstates, the practical guide to applying behavioral design to research and marketing. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but coming from a creative and then a research background, I can tell you that getting some of these principles and fundamentals just stuck into your head when you're starting a business or getting your career going, or if you've got a business that is stuck with a product line that you're not exactly sure why it's not shooting the lights out, do some market research, understand the mindset of your customers, do a bit of the hard work, be like Unilever, be like these companies that really understand their customers. And it's amazing the results you will see. So, Will, it's been great chatting to you. And let's just, the website I can send folks to?
You should, mindstategroup.com.
Great. So, mindstategroup.com. Will, it's been great. Thank you so much. I look forward to having you again.
In a world full of wine snobs, one podcast dares to keep it short, smart, and sassy.
I figured. I was like, how do we rip this out in 5 minutes?
This is not your grandma's wine podcast. Hi, I'm Forrest Kelly, the host of the show where we try to be fast, fearless, and full of flavor. We check out wine legends, wild stories, and zero time wasted.
Sip along at the Best Wine Pod and thebestwinepodcast.com.
The Best 5 Minute Wine Podcast.